Lesson 14. Risk management. Most new traders spend almost all their time on the wrong question. They obsess over when to buy, when to sell, which indicator is the magic one. And they spend almost no time on the only thing that actually decides whether they survive, which is how much they lose when they're wrong. That is what this lesson is about: risk management. The least exciting topic in trading, and the one that decides whether you are still doing this in 5 years. Let me give you the blunt version up front. A mediocre strategy with great risk management will keep you in the game. A brilliant strategy with terrible risk management will eventually blow you up. I've watched people with genuinely good strategies lose everything because they sized their positions like they couldn't imagine being wrong. And I've watched people with boring, average strategies grind out steady returns for years, because they never let a single bad day take them out. The difference was never the entry signal, it was the risk. So let's slow down and go through this properly. The 3 kinds of risk you are actually carrying when you are trading with a bot. The risks come from 3 different places, and it helps to keep them separate in your head. The first is market risk. This is the obvious one. Prices move, sometimes violently. You buy something and it drops 10%. There is a specific nasty version called gap risk, where price jumps straight past your stop loss, and you exit at a much worse price than the one you set. In crypto this happens a lot, because the market never closes and a big candle can blow through your level in seconds. There is also liquidity risk, where you want out but there aren't enough buyers at that price, so you eat slippage and exit even further from where you hoped. The second is system risk. This is the boring mechanical stuff that bites you anyway. The exchange's API goes down for maintenance, and you can't close a trade. Your internet drops. The server your bot runs on crashes. There is a bug in your strategy code, and it places an order 10 times bigger than you meant. None of these are exotic. They happen to everyone eventually, and they're the reason you don't just run a bot and forget about it. The third is psychological risk, and people constantly underestimate it. Even with a bot doing the trading, you are still there. You see red and you want to intervene. You have a string of losses and you start doubting the strategy. You have a big win and you want to pump more money in. You see Bitcoin spiking and you override the bot to chase it. The bot removes emotion from individual trades, but it doesn't remove it from you. Revenge trading, where you push the size up to win back what you just lost, has killed more accounts than any market crash. Stop losses. The one thing you do not skip if you take only one thing from this lesson. Take this. Every trade needs a stop loss. A real one. Set in code, not in your head. A stop loss is just a rule that says, if this trade goes against me by this much, I am out. No debating, no waiting for it to bounce. No hoping. Just out. Freqtrade lets you set a fixed stop loss as a single number. -0.1. O means the bot exits if the trade is down 10% from where it entered. -0.05 means 5%. You pick the number based on the volatility of what you are trading and how much pain your strategy can tolerate. And then the bot enforces it without asking you. Then there is the more interesting variant, the trailing stop loss. The idea is that as a trade moves into profit, you slide the stop loss up after it. So you lock in gains while still giving the trade room to keep running. So if you set a 1% trailing stop with a 1.5% offset, the bot waits until the trade is up 1.5% before it starts trailing. And from then on, it never gives back more than 1% from the highest point. The trade can keep climbing, but the moment it turns, you exit with most of the gain. The trailing stop is one of those features I genuinely encourage you to learn. It won't make every trade a winner, but it changes the shape of your results. You take fewer of those painful round trips where a winner turns into a loser, and you give back less when the market reverses on you. 2 honest caveats on stop losses. First, a stop loss is not a guarantee you exit at that exact price. If the market gaps, you exit at whatever price the gap lands on. That is gap risk, and there is no escaping it entirely. Second, if you set your stop so tight that normal market noise keeps hitting it, you'll get chopped to death on 1,000 tiny losses. The stop has to breathe a little. Tighter is not better. Position sizing. How much to bet if stop losses decide when you get out of a bad trade? Position sizing decides how bad that bad trade can actually be. And this is where most traders go wrong, because they think about it backwards. They pick a stake amount based on how confident they feel. Confidence is irrelevant. The market does not care how you feel. The professional answer is the 1% rule. You never risk more than 1%, maybe 2%, of your total capital on any single trade. So if you have $10,000, the most you should be willing to lose on a single trade is $100. That is the risk amount, not the position size, and the difference matters. Here is the intuition. The size of your position depends on two things: how much you are willing to lose and where your stop loss is. If you are willing to lose $100 and your stop is 5% away from your entry, then your position size is the 100 divided by 0.05, which is $2,000. If your stop is wider, say 10%, then your position shrinks to $1,000, same risk either way. You are sizing the position to the stop, not the other way around. That is a subtle idea, and it took me a while to really feel it. Most beginners do the opposite. They pick a position size first, often as much as they can afford, and then they stick a stop loss somewhere, and just hope the loss stays manageable. The result is that a wider stop means a bigger loss, which is backwards. Risk should be fixed first, and the position should flex around it. Let me show you why the 1% rule is more powerful than it sounds. Because the math is genuinely surprising. Say you start with $10,000 and you risk 1% per trade. You have a terrible month and lose 20 trades in a row. 20 losses, each 1% of your now shrinking account. You'd end up at around $8,170, down about 18%, painful absolutely, but you are still in the game. You have capital left, you can recover. Now run the same scenario with 10% risk per trade, which is what a lot of overconfident beginners actually do. 20 losses in a row, and you are not down 18%. You are down more than 88%. You are sitting on roughly $1,200. And to get back to your starting $10,000, you'd need a return of over 700%. That is the math of drawdowns. The deeper the hole, the harder the climb out, and it gets harder fast. The 1% rule isn't just conservative, it is what makes recovery geometrically possible after a bad run. In Freqtrade, the practical knobs you'll touch are stake amount, max open trades, and tradable balance ratio. Stake amount is how big each individual trade is. Max open trades caps how many trades can run at once, which matters because each one carries risk, and you don't want them all stacking up. Tradable balance ratio is how much of your account the bot is allowed to touch, because you generally want to keep some cash in reserve, rather than going all in. Portfolio risk. It is not just individual trades, so you've got your per-trade risk under control. Good. Now zoom out, because a portfolio of trades is more than the sum of its parts. The first lever is max open trades. If your per-trade risk is 1%, but you let 10 correlated trades run at once, you are effectively risking 10% on the same move. Capping concurrent trades is a blunt but effective way to keep total exposure sane. Something like 3 open trades is a common starting point. More is not better. The second lever is the max drawdown, which is a line you draw in advance and tell the bot to stop trading if it crosses. So if you set a 15% drawdown limit, the moment your account is down 15% from its peak, the bot stops opening new trades. That is a circuit breaker. It exists to stop you from compounding a bad run into a catastrophic one. And it is the closest thing you get to a panic switch that you set while calm rather than while panicking. Then there is correlation, which is the sneaky one. If you are trading Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a handful of altcoins that all move together, you don't have 5 independent positions. You have one big bet on crypto going up. Correlated assets give you fake diversification. In a real crash, they all drop together, and your diversified portfolio suddenly shows that you were just leveraged to the same underlying risk. The honest move is to check correlation between the pairs you are trading and avoid stacking too many that move in lockstep. And then there is volatility-based sizing, which is a more advanced version of position sizing. The idea is simple. When the market is wild, you trade smaller. When it is calm, you can afford to trade bigger. You take your normal position size, and you scale it down by how much more volatile than usual things currently are. This naturally reduces your exposure right when exposure is most dangerous, and it is one of those ideas that is easy to describe and hard to implement well, but worth knowing about. Monitoring, the part most people skip. Risk management isn't something you set up once and forget. It is a habit. You check on the system. Look at your account balance and where it stands relative to its peak, so you know if you are drawing down. Review your open positions and whether any of them look weird. Confirm your stop losses are actually in place, because a strategy that silently stopped placing stops is a real failure mode. Glance at the broader market because context matters, and make sure the system itself is healthy, the bot is running, the exchange API is responding. Nothing's erroring out in the logs. This is also where alerts earn their keep. Freqtrade can push notifications to Telegram, so when a trade opens or closes or a stop loss fires, you get a message. You can also enable the API server and check in over HTTP from a dashboard. The point isn't to stare at the bot all day. It is to know quickly when something needs your attention. The sweet spot is being notified of important events without being twitchy about every tick. I'd encourage you to set up alerts before you go live, not after. The worst time to discover you wanted monitoring is when something is already wrong. The honest rules let me collect the rules that actually matter in plain language. Never risk more than 1 or 2% of your capital on a single trade. Always use a real stop loss, set in code. Diversify, but diversify properly, meaning across assets that don't all move together. Cap how many trades you have open at once, because exposure adds up. Set a maximum drawdown at which the bot stops trading. Keep emotions out of the individual decisions, and out of the sizing decisions, and out of the should I turn this thing off decisions. Review your risk parameters regularly, because what made sense at one account size or one market regime might not make sense at another. And one more, which I think matters more than any of the technical ones. Never trade with money you can't afford to lose. Not rent money, not savings you need this year. Not borrowed money. If losing the entire account would damage your life in any meaningful way, you are trading with too much. Full stop. No strategy, no backtest, no matter how good it looks, changes that. The market doesn't care about your backtest, and the universe occasionally serves up events that no backtest prepared you for. You need to be in a position where the worst case is uncomfortable, not ruinous. What risk management can and can't do here is the thing I want to be honest about, because it is the part people skip. No risk management system prevents all losses. That is not what it is for. It is for preventing the catastrophic loss, the one that ends you, the one where you can't come back. The goal isn't to eliminate risk. That is impossible. Trading is risk. The goal is to stay in the game long enough for your edge. If you have one, to play out over hundreds and thousands of trades. Most strategies need a large sample before their real expectancy shows up, and you only get that large sample if you survive the rough patches in between. Risk management is what gets you from one to the other. This is also, honestly, what separates traders from gamblers. A gambler sizes by feel and hopes. A trader sizes by rule and survives. The strategies might even look similar on paper. The outcomes don't. So before you put real money into any strategy, get the risk controls in place. First, stop losses that actually fire. Position sizing that is based on a real rule, not vibes. A drawdown limit that will actually halt trading. Alerts that will actually tell you when something happens. Get all of that working in backtest and paper trading first. Because the moment you realize you needed them is always the moment you wish you'd already had them. That is lesson 14. In the next one, we'll keep going deeper into practical territory. Into the kind of decisions you'll be making week to week once the bot is actually running.